Good morning, Year 5. Our English lesson today is an editing lesson, and we are going to be editing part 1 and 2. So this is the piece of writing that you drafted on Friday, okay? So we are quickly going to read the Waggle. So if you want to read the first part of The Wizard of Oz, it is here for you, and I will make sure the PDF is on the website for you as well. But we are going to read through the Waggle. So this would be part 1 and 2. Alice lived in the midst of the Scottish moors with her mamma, Frances, and papa, Albert. They lived on a somewhat small farm, where no other house could be seen for miles. Her papa was a farmer and worked long hours out ploughing the little land that they had, and her mamma was a housewife, who spent most of the time in the kitchen trying to make adequate meals out of what little pickings they had. Their house was rather small, 5 walls, a roof, and 2 rooms. In the smallest room there were 2 beds. The small metal frame with a thin mattress one belonged to Alice. In the other room there was a fireplace that roared for most of the day, an old-looking stove, a warped cupboard with only one door, and a small round wooden table with 3 wooden chairs that had been fixed many times. Alice's only friends were the few farm animals that her papa had, and her dog, Poppy. As Alice stood on the doorstep, all that could be seen in front of her was the silhouetted dark shape of the rising moors rolling for miles. She knew the landscape so well, every hill, every valley. When the wind was fierce, it rolled through the hills, waking every living creature on its way. Alice could not remember ever seeing the sky turn blue. It always seemed a shade of grey. Alice had always longed for more. She knew out there must be more. Okay, so that is our part 1 and part 2 of the Waggle. So ours should look a little something like this. If you remember our part 1, we talked about what life was like on the farm, and then in part 2 we talked about when Dorothy could see the cyclone starting to come. So the first thing I want to do before I even edit or look at my draft, I want to go back to my plan. So here is my plan for part 1 of life on the farm. So I said I wanted to talk about Dorothy living in Kansas. I wanted to tell my author that she was an orphan and she lived with her aunt and uncle. I wanted to explain how the life was boring on the farm. I wanted to talk about how the house was run down, how the land was grey, and how Dorothy longed for more. So I need to make sure that I'm writing about those things in my paragraph, or my paragraphs if I've got more than one. And the vocabulary I said I wanted to use was prairie, baked, blades, shades of grey, bleak, stern, dull, and dreary. Okay, so here is my draft. So I'm going to read through my draft and just check that I've got those points in there. So Dorothy lived in the middle of the great Kansas prairies with her Uncle Henry, who was a farmer, and her Aunt Em, the farmer's wife. Dorothy was a lonely girl, lonely because she had nobody to talk to. Henry worked long, hard days digging the baked grey ground, while her aunt spent her days cooking and cleaning in their run-down, sunburnt house. Day after day the girl would play amongst the scorched blades with her small dog Toto. She laughed and played happily, giggling and squealing in delight. Inside, however, she longed for more than this dull, dreary life. So that is my draft so far. So I'm going to go back to my plan, and if you remember when we drafted we ticked off what we had, but I just want to do that again. So I've told my reader she lives in Kansas. I've told them she's an orphan. I've explained how life is boring and how Dorothy is lonely. I've talked about the house being run down. I talked a tiny little bit about the land being grey, but I think I could probably get a little bit more in there. And I've told them how she longs for more. Okay, so when I'm editing, I'm going to be thinking about trying to get some more in about explaining that the land is grey. Okay, so the next thing I want us to look at before we start to edit is these editing stations. So these are based on the stations of the London Underground, okay, but we have adapted them to be in with English. So we have punctuation point, we have spelling square, there is grammar grove, and other ones like that. But we are focusing purely today on punctuation point and spelling square. So punctuation point, we would stop at full stop farm. So I need to make sure that all of my sentences have got full stops in the correct place and add any that are missing. So I'm going to go through and find any full stops that might be missing. So when I was reading through my work just then, I realised there was one missing from here. She had nobody to talk to. Henry worked long, hard days. So in fact, I need one there because that is a new sentence. Okay. Are there any others? Well, her aunt spent her days cooking and cleaning in their rundown, sunburned house. Okay, I think that's all of my full stops, so I can leave that there. Then I've got capital letters. So it says all sentences should begin with a capital letter. Capital letters are also used for proper nouns like Tesco and Harry Potter. So I'm going to skim read my work and add in any missing capital letters. So Dorothy lived in the middle of the Great Kansas. Oh, Kansas, that's a place, isn't it? So that's a proper noun. There's only one Kansas that we know of, so that would need a capital letter. Let's see, Aunt M. Dorothy has a capital letter. Henry has a capital letter. My sentences are beginning with capital letters. Toto's got a capital letter. Brilliant. So that's all of my capital letters done. I didn't have any questions, so I'm going to leave that one. I could possibly go and add an exclamation mark, but I don't think I need one at this point. And then apostrophe Abby. So this is talking about how the apostrophes are used. So could there be any for contractions or for possession? So remember, possession means when something belongs to somebody. So let's go and see. I remember in mine here I talk about the farmer's wife, but actually I didn't put an apostrophe. So I have the apostrophe there because the wife belongs, we're saying that the wife belongs to the farmer, they come together, okay? So we've got an apostrophe for possession. Have I got any others? Let's see, the young girl, she played and laughed happily. And I think that is it, okay? So I'm going to go back to my editing station. So I've got comma cathedral this time, which I think they were all fine because I concentrated on there was a lot when I was drafting because of my sentence structure. But I will have a really quick look. So I've got my commas for parentheses in the right place, another one there in the correct place. I've got my comma for my add same add sentence. I've got my comma for my expanded noun phrases, and again there, and there for a subordinate clause. I've got one here for an expanded noun phrase. I've got a comma here for my fronted adverbial. I've got a comma here in the correct place for commas for parenthesis, and here to split my clauses. So my commas are fine. So that is me done with punctuation point. Okay. So then I've got spelling square. So first it starts with homophone hotel. So we know what homophones are. They're words that sound the same but have different meanings, such as there, and there, to and to, which and which, whose and who is, here and here, your and you are, practice and practice. So they have the same, they sound very similar or the same, but they have different meanings. So I remember when I was reading, there was one that I picked up and it was the homophone for there. This there means as in over there, it means there as in place, whereas I need the there for belonging, so I need THEIR. Okay, and all of the others, I think, let me check, so I'm skimming my writing like it tells me. Super, all of my others are correct. So I'm going to move on. So I've got keyword castle this time. So keywords are necessary in your writing. So they can be high frequency words, so words that we use most commonly such as were, people, went, because, was, things like that. Or they could be topic related words. So for us, we might think about words like prairie and Kansas and scorched and shades of grey, because they are particular to our piece of writing. They are specific to our piece of writing. So I know in my work I've used prairies. However, here I've got the word middle. But if we remember in the book, it talks about them being in the midst of. So I'm going to make mine match that, because that makes it more relevant to the book and text I am writing about, doesn't it? Okay. So again, I've got prairies. I've got the word scorched, which they use in the book quite a lot. And I think that's it so far. And then, oh, that's the wrong one. Then I've got ambitious word academy. So ambitious words can be 2-tier words. So these are high level words. That's what that means. Okay. So we can use them in different contexts, or we could use powerful verbs, powerful adjectives, and powerful adverbs as well. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my writing, because I think there's some vocabulary that I could probably up level. So I up leveled middle to midst, which I think that makes it sound a lot better. And then I wanted to think about here, Henry worked long, hard days. I think by hard I mean quite tiring days. So instead of hard, I'm going to use exhausting. Henry worked long, exhausting days. And then digging, I remember in my waggle that I had, it said about her papa was ploughing the field. So ploughing and digging are quite similar, but ploughing is a bit probably a bit harder and a lot more digging. So I'm going to change digging to ploughing. And then I've got the OUGH spelling, which is a year 5 standard. It's a year 5 spelling word. Okay. The baked grey ground. I want to keep grey because that tells me that the land is grey then, doesn't it? And baked tells me that it might be quite hard, which is telling me why it's exhausting. Okay. While her aunt spent the days cooking and cleaning in their run-down, sun-burnt house. I quite like that. However, I think in my head I was thinking to write blistered, the run-down blistered house, because in the book I remember it said that the sun had cracked all of the paint, so it made it all bubble, which is a bit like blistered, like if you know what a blister is on your hand or your foot or something. So it's made it all bubbly, and then the rain has washed it away. So I'm going to use blistered to make it link in with the book. Okay, so that is your task today. You all need to read the waggle, look at your plan, read through it, read through your draft, make sure you've got everything you wanted to write about. Then you are going to rewrite your draft, making sure to check your punctuation especially, and making sure to check homophones, keywords, and ambitious vocabulary. So you're not just adding in, you are completely rewriting part 1 and part 2 and up leveling as you go, just like you would in school. And I just want to remind you that it is okay to magpie, but you need to be making sure you are doing your own writing. Yesterday we had a few people who had just copied the model from the flip chart, which again, it's okay to magpie, but not to copy. Okay, so if you've got any questions, please let Mr. Bates or I know, and somebody will get back to you throughout this morning.